never would have left my beloved police department. And take loaded illegal firearms off of people 2, 3, and 4 times. And those individuals were released from custody before my officers were done processing the arrest. I saw babies as young as 1 in their strollers at family barbecues, shot and killed by a stray gang bullet, shot by an individual that we knew was a prior shooter that should have been in custody, and that baby should be alive. I watched my cop squad every day with a fear in their eyes. Not just the fear of losing their life, which we all know is a part of the responsibility that police undertake, as we saw in Rochester last night, but the fear of losing their jobs and potentially their freedoms for doing the job that society needs them to do. And I looked at the seat that I was sitting in and the hat that I was wearing, and I realized I was sitting in the wrong seat and wearing the wrong hat to affect the type of change that New York State so desperately needs. Ladies and gentlemen, I was humbled when Congressman Zeldin asked me to be his running mate. As proven yesterday, he's a fighter. He's a family man, he's a congressman, he's an Army veteran, and he is the man with a clear vision on how to lead New York State back to glory. We are living in an upside-down time where criminals are labeled as victims and sometimes hailed as heroes. And then we have good people that go about their daily business, like Jose Alba in New York City, who went to work that day to provide for his family, when an individual entered his store and threw the elderly man against a wall, and he didn't know if he was going to live or die, and when he defended himself, a tragic end to a course of events that was set in motion by the actual perpetrator, not by Mr. Alba. When he defended himself, a reckless district attorney like Alvin Bragg charged him with attempted murder. It's unacceptable. And the fighter that Congressman Zeldin is, and the commitment that he has to law and order and public safety, he took that fight right to Alvin Bragg and demanded that those charges were dropped. Thankfully, because of the pressure, Alvin Bragg dropped those charges. Thankfully. New York is one of the greatest states in the country, and we are leading the way in population loss. We should be energy independent. We should be bringing jobs back to New York State. We understand in this administration that you do not relinquish your right as a parent simply by sending your children to school. We owe our children better. No matter public school, private school, charter school, homeschool, or whatever, we owe our children to be set up for success no matter where they live, what they look like, what God they pray to, or what gender they are. We owe our children better. And under this administration, parents will get it. So you need to get excited now, because it's going to take all of us. This is a game of inches. I believe that we are going to win. I believe that the silent majority is awake. But it is going to take each and every one of us to stand up on November 8th, go to the voting booth and say no more. We demand our freedoms, our personal safety, our personal accountability. We demand public safety. That is government's #1 responsibility. And when that is taken away from law enforcement and not provided by government, we have the right to self-defense. We are on the precipice of history, and we are all going to do this together. I never would have walked away from my job if I believed Congressman Zeldin's integrity was anything but beyond reproach. Integrity matters in my world. This is the man with the clear vision. This is the man that will restore New York State. On January 1st, 24 years ago, I stood in New York City and I raised my right hand. And I swore then to protect the people of the city of New York. On January 1st, with your help, I will stand next to then Governor Zeldin. And we will both again raise our right hands, only this time to provide leadership and to vow to protect all of the people of New York State, and we will deliver back to you the New York State that you deserve. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Without further ado, thankfully I'm introducing my partner and running mate in the same condition he was yesterday when we began the rally. But if it shows you anything, it shows the heart of a lion. It shows the heart of a fighter. And if he's going to fight like that on a stage, imagine what he's going to do every day for you and I in Albany. Without further ado, your next governor of New York State, Lee Zeldin.
Alison Esposito. She's going to be a great lieutenant governor. Alison was raised in a law enforcement household. Her father was an NYPD chief. Alison was the commanding officer of the 70th Precinct in Brooklyn. If Alison chose to stay, she would have become an NYPD chief herself. Alison had to retire not to be our state's next lieutenant governor. Alison had to retire in order to be our candidate to be our state's next lieutenant governor. And Alison's all in. Thankfully, Alison's here on this tour because she was one of the key people who jumped in to that fray last night. I looked over and I saw a big pile pretty quickly, and there was Alison right in the middle of it. I would expect nothing less. She's a strong woman in many ways, with a lot of passion. Most importantly, I see this passion for the men and women she served with in law enforcement. I was raised in law enforcement myself, actually 2 law enforcement households. My parents were divorced and remarried. I spent my week inside of one law enforcement household. There was a trooper household. Spent my weekend in another law enforcement household, my father and stepmother. And what we see right now at this moment in time with this push in Albany for what are pro-criminal policies that are making our streets less safe, we need to be doing so much more to be unapologetically backing our men and women in blue and repealing cashless bail, because what we saw last night as an example, just the latest example, is that the attacker on stage was immediately released due to cashless bail, charged with a felony. You're not allowed to try to stab anybody. And here you have somebody at a political event attempting to stab a member of Congress and instantly released by New York State law. A couple of weeks ago, we were standing in front of the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office. And while we were there focusing on the Jose Alba case, what had also just happened was that 2 Mexican cartel drug smugglers had just been released on cashless bail after they were caught with $1.2 million worth of crystal meth. Now, the argument in favor of cashless bail is that you don't want somebody to stay locked up behind bars only because they can't afford a very small amount of bail. That's the argument that gets made by activists and advocates. I would offer you that if you are a Mexican cartel drug smuggler with $1.2 million worth of crystal meth and you don't set aside enough money, that's on you. You're a bad businessman, you're a bad drug dealer, you're a bad criminal. But those people should not have been released on cashless bail. 93-year-old Connie Torrey of Syracuse was murdered by somebody released on cashless bail. These stories are all across New York. Historic crime rate increases are not just coming out of New York City. We're seeing numbers coming out of Syracuse, seeing numbers coming out of Rochester. People want to feel safe on their streets. They want life in New York to be more affordable and filled with more opportunities. They want freedom. They want a government where they feel like they're in charge of their government. They want public servants who believe that public service is about serving the public, not being served by the public. Kathy Hochul had a really bad week. The Albany Times-Union wrote a story that someone had given her, a family gave her hundreds of thousands of dollars of campaign contributions. And That company ended up receiving over $600 million of tax dollars on a no-bid contract. Now, how would Kathy Hochul have the authority to be able to go around New York State's competitive bidding rules in order to give her campaign donor this massive several $100 million contract? Well, every single month, Kathy Hochul unilaterally extends her COVID emergency powers with the power that she grants herself without seeking approval from the state legislature. And she does it every single month. So she's able to cut corners. And this isn't the only scandal. And I believe that we have an opportunity to do something really different and radical in this state. We haven't done this in a long time, but I'm telling you, trust me, this happens in a bunch of other states. See, what they do is, on a November election, they elect a governor and lieutenant governor. And then at the end of the 4-year term, I know this is going to sound crazy to all of you. You haven't experienced this in a while. At the end of the 4-year term, they're still there. We are on our 3rd lieutenant governor now in less than a year. We need to have a government that we all can be proud of again. This isn't about being Republican versus Democrat, red on blue. We have support of independents. There are disenfranchised Democrats. There are people who are hitting their breaking point because they're struggling to afford to survive in this state, because they don't feel safe in New York. They don't feel free, so they're heading elsewhere, to Florida and Texas, to the Carolinas and Tennessee. We want all New Yorkers to stay and fight with us, to work alongside us, for us to be able to successfully save our state. But in order to do that, we have a November 8th election that's coming up first. And we just came off of a spirited primary. And it was a 4-way race. And to Andrew Giuliani's credit, immediately after the polls closed and the results started coming in, Andrew called. We had a totally positive conversation talking about working together to save our state. I had a great conversation later that evening with Rob Astorino, and on Sunday we're doing an event together in Westchester. Statements of support came out from Andrew and from Rob and from Harry Wilson. It's important for all of us to be united, working forward together with this shared goal of succeeding in a rescue mission to save New York. Now, when you're on the campaign trail, in a way, your opponents, your adversaries, nothing changed the fact that Andrew and I have been friends for a long time. Now, because we're running against each other, I never shared this story. But now he's here at a Zeldin Esposito Fire Hochul Unity rally, so I will tell you that one of the coolest Andrew Giuliani stories that I have. I don't know. I ran out of time at the debate. I almost got to this. So my wife and I get to the White House, and it's pouring. And my wife is wearing an outfit that she bought. This is one of the downsides of keeping family invested in the experience of being a member of Congress, is because every time my wife learns that there's a new big event coming, it ends up costing me a lot of money, because she always has to get, and Julie, you appreciate this, you have to get a new outfit for the event. So she had on her new outfit. But it's pouring. Andrew comes out wearing his suit for the day. And this is the beginning of the day. And Andrew brings out an umbrella. But he only had one umbrella. Andrew had a decision to make. You might ask yourself, what would you do in this moment with this decision to make? It's the start of the day. You work in the White House. What if the president calls you up in 20 minutes and say, Andrew, I need you to come to the Oval Office right now, and you show up wearing, you're just absolutely drenched in a suit. It's not an option, many would say. Andrew insisted. He gave my wife the umbrella. And Andrew is standing out there in the pouring rain, destroying his suit at the start of a workday. And I remember asking, like, Andrew, what are you going to do? His mind was thinking about it. He's like, I don't know. But all he did know was that he wanted to give that umbrella to Diana. And by the way, here in this very public setting, on behalf of my wife, Diana, I got to tell you, I have a bunch of stories like that about Andrew. He's a good man. His heart is in the right place. There are many years of public service and public advocacy ahead for him, and I'm grateful for his support. This is a unity rally, and we are unified in the goal of firing Captain Hope and saving New York. Thank you again, Andrew. Maybe next event. We have a few of these today. I'll keep coming up with new stories to reveal each stuff.
Well, like you, like me, your wife is the most charming in the couple, so I have a situation, so I did it for her.
Yes, Andrew and I both married way up. Speaking of marrying way up, and I served with him for 4 years in the New York State Senate, my friend John DeFrancisco is here, the former state senator. John, are you in favor of repealing those cashless bail laws, I bet, huh? Oh, yeah. I bet John would love to be able to. I know you're not looking to run for a 2-year term, but you'd be happy to go there back for a day to be part of making sure our streets are safe again. We put on our website, zeldinfornewyork.com/securestreets. If you go there, there are a couple dozen proposals that we believe will make life in New York safer. Right there at the top of the list for so many New Yorkers is the need to repeal cashless bail. The first thing that I will do after I'm sworn into office is to do my constitutional duty. It's not just a constitutional authority, but to do my constitutional duty. To remove a district attorney who refuses to enforce the law. If the governor, we don't have recall elections in New York. If we have a district attorney refusing to enforce the law, the governor has the duty to remove that DA. So the first thing after taking the oath is notifying Albert Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney who refuses to enforce all different kinds of laws across the board and all other kinds of laws he treats as lesser offenses. I will let him know he's fired.
Yes!
Last to close, and this is something Alison mentioned. The biggest issue last night coming out of Monroe County wasn't on a stage in Fairport. When Alison and I were with the Monroe County sheriffs back in their office, they got word that 2 Rochester police officers were shot. They later would learn that one of them died. And as we take a moment going forward from here, with a clear sense of purpose of what brought us here today, but an even clearer sense of purpose of what we need to do going forward between now and November 8th and beyond, regardless of your politics. It's about being New Yorkers. Thanking our men and women in law enforcement, thanking our veterans, cherishing our liberty, defending our flag, preserving freedom, and making sure that we are all in to save New York. November 8th, when you all go to sleep, I plan on seeing all of you, knowing that everybody has a big smile on their face, everybody's feeling good, not just because they worked hard, taking nothing for granted, all in knowing the stakes, but knowing that it was successful. Seeing everything going on right now in Washington and wanting to do something about it, when you go to sleep on Tuesday, November 8th, you know that you did your part to successfully help to flip the House of Representatives, to make sure that there's a balance of power again down in Washington, D.C., and Nancy Pelosi is no longer the speaker. How's that sound? When you go to sleep on Tuesday, November 8th, look good, not just because you worked as hard as you can, taking nothing for granted, but you did it successfully. To restore balance and common sense to Albany. To reverse the attacks on wallets, on safety, on freedom. To allow our families to stay here, to thrive. And to be able to tell all the people in their lives who are thinking about leaving, it's important for all of them to stay because you did it successfully to make sure that Kathy Hochul is fired, one-party rule in Albany is ended. We will elect for the first time in decades a Republican governor here again in the state of New York. We will secure our streets. We will make sure that opportunity goes further, that your wallets are defended, that you have a government that you can be proud of again. We are going to make history on Tuesday, November 8th, and we are going to get to work to save New York. Thank you all for being here. We're happy to answer any questions from the media.
Remember, you start moving towards the beginning, please. Thank you. Is this good for the footage?
Andy, is this good where they are?
You go right to the game, and you only needed a second though because they're a superhero. She actually flew. If you watch the replay of the video, she's flying. You can actually see the cape slow the.
Did you keep the heels on? Importantly, see, I would not have been able to keep my heels on.
We need more people on that side as well, please. We'll go on their side.
Are you overnight? Or are you going tonight?
Overnight, going back tomorrow morning. Yeah, I did one glove, but he's got a week out. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Did that just happen suddenly?
It happened like a day. Yeah, it was pretty sudden.
Good. Media, okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Congressman, when that person ended up on stage with you yesterday, it looked like there was a brief moment of confusion as to what was going on. When did you sort of realize there was, a problem?
So in my peripheral, at first, I saw somebody come onto the stage. But it wasn't until he got closer that I saw two different things happening that would trigger two different reactions. The first thing I saw was that he was wearing a hat that says he was a veteran. Now, the way that I'm wired, when I see somebody wearing a hat that says that they're a veteran, my guard couldn't possibly be more dropped. But at the same exact time, I noticed he had a weapon in his hand. And it had two holes where he had two fingers through the holes. It had two sharp dagger-like edges on it. And he was telling me, "You're done." And obviously, in that point, regardless of whatever's on your hat, this was not a normal situation, and there needed to be action taken. When he lifted up his hand and he was lunging for my throat area, the first thought was to grab onto his wrist and just to hold it, because there were so many people around that I would expect there to be help quickly. And that's what happened. And Alison was right in the middle of that fray. A bunch of other people came. They tackled this attacker right away. And within minutes, law enforcement was there. And I'm very grateful for the amount of people who were around who instinctively knew what to do. And by the way, I have a feeling if those 7, 8, 9, 10 people didn't instantly jump on him the way that they did, there was probably the next group of 7, 8, 9, 10 who would have done it. There were a lot of people who reacted very smartly, and I'm very proud of that response in what was a really difficult moment.
Lee, did you have to change any of your security protocol today? Is this experience any different, or any of your logistics to deal with it?
Yes, all security for all events for the remainder of the campaign will be ramped up. That's something that started this morning. This is our second rally of the day. We just came from Seneca, where there's increased law enforcement presence, and that will be sustained through November 8th.
How do you respond to those that look at what happened and the fact that they were released shortly after this incident and might somewhat cynically look at that and realize that they were...
Let's get her some water. Somebody has some water.
Do you have water?
Behind you.